We also want to just recognize Permanent Secretary for Information and Publicity, who is also my boss in another hat I put on, Comrade Nick Mangwana. Thank you so much for coming, sir. I would like to honor also the host of tonight's program, and this is brought to you by Daily News in association with Daily News, Financial Gazette, and Business Life. But also, in line with that, we would like to recognize the Zimbabwe Human Rights Commission, who are part of this whole brand motive, as well as the Zimbabwe Peace Project, ZHRC, and also the Ministry of Justice, Parliamentary Affairs, who have brought us together. But thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for coming tonight. I don't want us to waste too much time, but I'd like to call upon our Honorable Minister, who is going to lay the foundation for tonight's discussion. We would like to have a robust conversation, dialogue around a very important issue tonight. Honorable Minister, Minister of Justice and Legal and Parliamentary Affairs, Comrade Ziyambi Ziyambi, please would you take the podium and come and just address us. After that, we will give each panelist some time. Thank you, sir. Please, round of applause for him.
Thank you very much, Comrade Shingi Muyeza, our facilitator for tonight. Allow me to acknowledge our sponsors for tonight, the ANZ, the publishers of the Daily News and the Daily News on Sunday, and everyone from Daily News, all the facilitators here present, the panelists, I beg your pardon, the panelists here present, invited guests, ladies and gentlemen, good evening to you all. I want to start by saying that I am greatly indebted to the Daily News for this rare opportunity to engage and interact with you, and more crucially to reflect on the role of government in protecting and promoting human rights in the country. I am indebted to the Associated Newspapers of Zimbabwe for inviting me to this important discussion forum, and I'm greatly humbled and hope that our discussion will be productive and of benefit to our citizens. To put this discussion into perspective and context, it is prudent for us to appreciate that the basis for the existence of any government polity is the social contract between the people and the government. The generic meaning of the social contract, according to classical theorists, is that it is a pact between men and the state whose aim is to do away with the arbitrariness, lawlessness, and insecurity. Implicit from this is the duty placed on the state per the social contract to maintain law and order, safeguard fundamental human rights of all, and to guarantee the safety of its citizens. The role of the government in safeguarding human rights should thus be understood in this context. So when we go to an election, ladies and gentlemen, we want to establish this social contract to do exactly, among others, what I have enunciated. The Constitution of Zimbabwe, in Section 44, places a duty on the state and every person, including juristic persons and every institution and agency of government at every level, to respect, protect, promote, and fulfill rights and freedoms entrenched therein. Our Constitution explicitly sanctions the government and everyone to promote and protect human rights. Therefore, it is a collective role. It is our collective role, people, especially public servants and the government at large, to respect, protect, promote, and fulfill our rights and freedoms. In terms of the preamble of the Constitution, Amendment number 2013, we as the people of Zimbabwe, we reaffirm our commitment to uphold and defend fundamental human rights and freedoms, which affirmation is in sync with one of Zimbabwe's founding values in terms of Section 3, subsection 1, paragraph C of the Constitution, which is to, I quote, respect fundamental human rights and freedoms. In addition to the above, Section 45, subsection 1 of the Constitution, which is the Bill of Rights, binds the state and all executive, legislative, and judicial institutions and agencies of government at every level. As can be gleaned therefrom, the social contract that we have per the Constitution has enough safeguards that promote the enjoyment of human rights. Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, as you may be aware, we are party to and have ratified 12 United Nations human rights treaties and 26 International Labour Organization conventions, which is a clear demonstration of government's commitment to creating a human rights culture in the country. It should thus always be drawn to all of us that we live in a democracy where our norms, values, and principles are determined by the people, not in abstract terms, but concrete terms, as enshrined in the Constitution, which Constitution prohibits arbitrary use of power by the government. Human rights are central to our collective development. Consequently, we should not exercise enjoyment of these rights at the expense of the rights of other individuals. Classical examples are freedoms of assembly and association and the freedom to demonstrate and petition. As far as a person has rights and freedoms, those same rights and freedoms have fundamental responsibilities or obligations. Further, it is the role of the government to raise awareness of fundamental rights and freedoms, and conversely, their responsibilities or obligations which trigger limitations for their common enjoyment as a safeguard of human rights. Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, human rights obligations of government must follow the classical tripartite typology of state human rights obligations, namely the duty to respect, the duty to protect, and the duty to fulfill. The duty to respect means that government or its agencies must not violate human rights through their own actions. This requires government to refrain from interfering with the enjoyment of the rights and freedoms of its citizens. As regards the duty to protect, the government's role is to ensure that third parties do not violate the rights and freedoms of the individual. The duty to fulfill means that government must take positive action to facilitate the enjoyment of the rights and freedoms. For example, the government is obliged to fulfill the right to education by sustaining a good educational system. To comply with the duty to fulfill the right of individuals not to be discriminated against, human rights mechanisms such as the Zimbabwe Human Rights Commission and the Zimbabwe Gender Commission have been established by the government in terms of the Constitution. In addition to the above, as government, we must and have, through different agencies, promote the understanding of and respect of human rights of all citizens. This has been a shift from the old order, and we hope that in the long run, these initiatives will help inculcate a culture of human rights in the country. It is our role as government to pay particular attention to the promotion and protection of rights of vulnerable and disadvantaged groups, such as persons with disabilities, ethnic minorities, indigenous communities, victims of sexual discrimination, children, and elderly people. We must take measures as government to foster participatory governance, to conduct human rights-based evaluations and impact assessments, to recalibrate citizens' concerns as human rights issues, to establish procedures for verifying the compatibility of some policies and regulations with human rights, and to report on compliance with human rights treaties, to provide systematic human rights training to civil servants, and to raise public awareness of human rights. In this context, ladies and gentlemen, it is highly desirable to capacitate existing human rights institutions with sufficient human and financial resources that could fully take charge of human rights issues in the country, that we could take charge of our human rights. Vanawa Mugwadi and other commissions, they need capacitation. I would thus like to assure you, fellow countrymen, that the Second Republic's human rights policy has always been about realizing the aspirations of citizens. It is tried that government has the primary responsibility to promote and protect human rights, but institutionalized cooperation on human rights between the government and non-state actors can have a positive impact on the level of implementation of the international human rights obligations of the state. Thus, as a government, we cannot succeed without everyone coming on board. The principle of shared responsibility of different tiers of government for the protection and promotion of human rights has been on several occasions underlined by the United Nations Human Rights Treaty bodies. The above roles notwithstanding, government has faced many challenges in trying to fulfill its human rights mandate, the major one being inadequate funding for the human rights institutions. Human rights institutions' capacity to implement and promote human rights has in most instances been hindered by lack of adequate resources due to difficult economic situation obtaining in the country. The other challenge is the lack of adequate coordination between government and other stakeholders, especially in the civil society. A clear-cut division of powers between the different tiers of government and even civil society is the precondition for the establishment of accountability and hence the precondition for the implementation of human rights. It must become self-understood that every authority provided with public power is to respect, protect, and fulfill human rights. As a Second Republic, we have a very unenviable task before us. You agree with me that every transition is difficult and needs everyone's input. Since coming into power, the new dispensation has committed itself to opening up democratic space and ensuring the enjoyment of fundamental rights by all. The Public Order and Security Act is being replaced by the Maintenance of Peace and Order Bill, which awaits presidential assent. IPA is being repealed and replaced by three bills, namely the Zimbabwe Media Commission Bill, the Freedom of Information Bill, and the Data Protection Bill. Ladies and gentlemen, To ensure the safety of our citizens and to guarantee respect for their rights, police are being retrained on respect for human rights, and even their curricula is being looked into so that it conforms with government's thrust on protection and promotion of human rights. As we move forward, I hope that we engage more productively for the benefit and development of our country. I thank you.